and in this video I'd like to talk about moving from the Hara, or moving from the Tian as the Chinese call it. Now, this is a phrase we hear quite a lot in literature from some of the old masters, that the technique comes from the Hara or comes from the Tian if it's a Chinese stylist, but what does that actually mean? Okay, sometimes it's mystified and everything by, oh, it's your center of your chi, okay, but basically it's just behind and below your navel, and it's where your core muscles are, okay, so it's basically moving from your core muscles. Now, this may be a bit controversial for some people because it's going to contradict some conventional wisdom, particularly within the karate world. The Hara, like I say, is just behind and slightly below the belly button. So the Hara is about there. Now, most of our instruction for years and years and years is being moved from the hips. And you see, they're not quite in the same place. Now, most Chinese styles will say to move from the waist. It's only the Japanese ones that say move from the hips. And bearing in mind that, the Japanese styles, a lot of it derived from Chinese stuff, so it was their stuff first. Also, an awful lot is being dumbed down for various reasons. So, where this really clicked home for me was looking at teki. Now, or Noihanchi as some styles call it. If we're stuck in a horse stance throughout the entire kata, okay, I've got a bit bad knees, so I can't go too deep with this stance. But if we're stuck in the horse stance throughout the entire kata and I'm moving from the hips, I've got very little movement. Okay. Now, I used to try and overcome this with doing like a vibration. Okay, and that will work to a certain extent. Okay, I'm not saying that's wrong. It will work, but is it necessarily the best way? So if I rotate my hips as far as they'll go and they stop there, and if I rotate from the waist, I can actually move further. So instead of a punch that, well, my body's turned there, I can actually turn much more of my body weight into the technique. And this is all through teki, or this kind of stance restriction. But if you look at some of the other katas as well, like sort of Hian or Pinan Godan, where you've got this uchi-uki and then a yakuzuki punch. Again, in your back stance, you've got very little from there, very little hip movement. But if you turn the waist, then you've got a lot more movement, okay? So, like I say, it's the difference between there and there, okay? So, I would say movement comes from the waist rather than from the hips. They're very close, it's a very small adjustment, but you will be able to get more movement and more body weight into your technique, particularly when you're in restrictive stances, like sort of stuck in horse stance or stuck in a back stance where you can't move the hips very far. And also, it just tends to be more relaxed and easier, okay? The Chinese got it right. It was a little bit corrupted in getting the message across in its transference to the West, I believe. Right, just want to emphasise that point a little bit more about turning from the waist. I'm deliberately not wearing a gi because you can see this more easily in a t-shirt than you can in a big floppy gi. So, as you can see, I've sat myself in the chair. Now this means that the hips cannot move, okay? So if I try moving from the waist now, rather than just from the hips, you can see there's quite a bit of movement there, okay? Now I'm not twisting from the shoulders, okay? It is moving from the waist. I'll put the hand on there. You can see the hand moving, okay? So like I said, not twisting the shoulders, that's definitely moving from the waist. Now, I mentioned teki stroke Noihanchi earlier on. So if you put that into terms of teki, when you're in your horse stance, there's that elbow strike. Much more body weight going into it. When we come across to the kakuzuki, the hook punch, again, you've got a lot more body weight going into that hook punch. And again, with a double punch at the end, okay? It's much easier from there with just the hips, there with the waist going in, you can put a lot more into it. So I suggest you try it yourself. Sit in a chair so your hips cannot move, okay, and just see how far you can twist. But twist it from the Hara, from the belly, not from the shoulders, okay? That's cheating. It's got to be twisted from down there. Okay, give it a go. Right, we've looked at situations where we've got restricted movements because of our stance, so it makes more sense to move from the waist than it does from the hips. Okay, we get more movements. We've also looked at an exercise where we're sitting in the chair and we isolate that waist movements separate to the hip movements. Okay, so you can practice that movements. Now, this is not a particular easy movement to learn. If I try to teach you a new technique, or anyone try to teach you a new technique, so I say a knife band strike, it's quite easy to pick up. You're using all your external muscles. Okay, that's easy to learn, easy to pick up. Okay, what we're looking at here is moving our core muscles. We're looking at moving internally, and we're also looking at using that to engage our fascial system throughout the body. Now, this takes a lot more learning, okay, a lot more studying, a lot more practice. It's not going to be picked up quickly or easily. So if you want to kind of learn to do this, you've got to be prepared to put the time in and take the time to practice. Don't kind of like try it once or twice and say, oh, this don't work. You know, it's not something you're going to pick up just like that. Okay, so using that exercise that we're just talking about, sitting in the chair where we isolate that waist movement, even when we don't have a restricted stance, like in Teki and Naihanchi, we've got a full movement of the hips as much as we like. Again, the old master said move from the Hara, so they would initiate the movement from the Hara to begin with. So if I just take a straight punch, okay, now just from an ordinary standing stance, if I try to rotate the waist that way, as we did while we're sitting in the chair, okay, so I try to get that rotation going, feel that rotation, okay, get a kind of torsion feeling throughout my body, then I release the torsion and release it into the punch. Now rotate it the other way, okay, so you feel the torsion through the body, then release the torsion and punch. Now, this is the best way to start it: rotate, punch, rotate, punch, okay? That's the easiest place to start. Again, a little bit more practice. You can put it into your ordinary stances, and you can put it into a lot more techniques. So if I rotate this way, I can put that into my rising block. Rotate the other way, I can put it into my punch. Now, this will have to start off being done a little bit slowly, so you feel that rotation, and when you feel it, then release. Feel the rotation, then release. Now, obviously this is slow for a real life situation, okay? So if you're in a real life situation like, oh, get out of the twist going, then release, yeah, by that time you've been hit. So what we're looking at now is basically really going back to basics. Get the feeling, okay? Once you've got the feeling, then we can speed it up. And then if we just take, so we say 2 punches. So I rotate that way, then I rotate that way. Now, when you're starting it, I say twist, get the torsion, release. Twist the other way, get the torsion, release. When you get more used to it, obviously you can come together and move a lot faster. Okay, so we learn to get that twist feeling, generate the movement. The movement actually starts by rotating there. Okay, then rotating it back the other way. Once we've got that, we can put it into all our movements. With practice, it'll all speed up. You'll find it's more powerful, okay, because you're engaging the waist. This is where most of your body weight is, most of your core muscles, your musculature. From an internal point of view, as I mentioned a moment ago, it pulls on all the fascial systems throughout the body, okay, to engage all your muscular trains throughout the body. And also it helps you to relax the shoulders and everything. When you're concentrating on the movement from down here, the shoulders and everything tend to relax. So you tend to get rid of that kind of movement. Okay, so like I say, some people pick this up fairly quickly, Some people, you're going to try this and it's not going to work at first. It takes practice. Don't expect it to just come like that. Okay, using the external muscles, that's easy. Using the internal muscles, that's a lot more difficult. It takes a lot more training. But when you do get it, it's really good. The feeling is like the hand is being thrown. I'm not thrusting my arm, it's being thrown. It's like when you get a pebble thrown off your tyre. Okay, you're driving along, tyre hits a pebble and throws it out. That's the feeling. Okay, so the tyre is basically around the waist, that's rotating, and the pebble that's being thrown, that's your fist. And it's just effortless. It's really effortless. And everything will become smoother, more powerful, sharper, and more relaxed. Okay? Give it a try, have a work on it. Like I say, it's not going to come easy. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe or like below and leave me your feedback. Thank you very much.